Okay, parents, we are going to talk about mental blocks today because, well, this is what I do. Specifically, how can your gymnast move through her mental block? Because we all know that feeling of watching your child get stuck, not being able to do a skill, and being there for quite a long time. So, what are some of the steps that your gymnast needs to do in order to move through her mental block and get back to doing her skills again? The first thing that I always ask my gymnast to do is become a detective. Tell them, put your detective hat on, get out your magnifying glass, and it is time to look for clues. Mental blocks don't just come out of nowhere. It feels like they do because on one hand, you have a gymnast who was performing these skills beautifully. Then the next moment, she can't do them at all. Skills that she's likely competed, even performed for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, every season up until this point. So these are skills that she can do. And now all of a sudden, her brain is putting on the brakes. That's what I like to call it. And I explain it to gymnasts as your brain goes into freeze mode and it tells your body not to do the skill. It's not that your gymnast can't do it because we know she can. You've seen her do it. You've seen her do those skills. You've seen her do her series on high beam. Probably did it at regionals or states and competed it beautifully. And now her brain is telling her not to go. So the skill is not lost. This is one thing I always make clear with my gymnasts. Your skill is not gone. It's that your brain is telling you not to go for it. And there's a big difference between those two. So we need your gymnast to become a detective and start to notice what's happening when she doesn't go for her skills. Now, let me rewind a little bit and say that when a mental block appears, even though it feels like it's out of the blue or all of a sudden, there's been stuff brewing before the moment when her brain put the brakes on. There's always something going on there. And so I always like to look at the weeks and months leading into a mental block happening, figure out what was going on. Often I hear gymnasts who were the best gymnasts in their group, and now it's time to move up to the next level. Or a gymnast who won a big competition and is the best in her gym, and now all of a sudden she gets this mental block. Or a gymnast who had an injury, and when she came back, she could do the skill, but now she's not doing it. And so all of these kinds of issues that arise leading into a mental block signify that her brain is dealing with some sort of fear or pressure. It's not fear of the skill because we know she can do it. It's not always pressure to compete the skill because she's competed it before, but often it's those thoughts of, I'm the best, I have to keep being the best. Everyone is learning these skills, I've got to learn them too. Everyone's moving up to the next level. I don't want to be held behind or left behind. It's the expectations that often shut your gymnast down from doing her skill. It's those expectations that she has for herself. And you might not even know them. They might be just built-in expectations. Maybe she hasn't declared that they're pressures that she's feeling, but these are expectations that she has for herself. I'm going to continue being the best. I need to prove to my coach that I can do this. I need to keep up with my teammates. Having your gymnast become a detective then asks her to start noticing some of the thoughts that she's having. Start to think about the weeks and months leading into that mental block, but also right now when she goes into the gym, what's happening? What are her thoughts? What are her thoughts about the skill? And when I say about the skill, I don't mean like, oh, this series is hard. I mean, I'm standing up on high beam and coach expects me to go. Or everyone's going to look at me and laugh because they're going to see me on low beam, not doing my series, and they know I can do it. I just competed it. I'm really tired today. I do that a lot with gymnasts who, when they get tired, their brain just goes into freeze mode. That's the easiest place for her brain to be. So sometimes it just defaults to that place of, I'm not going to do this today. Asking your gymnast to be a detective is just a way to get her to start noticing some thoughts and expectations and pressures that she might be feeling that could be continuing the mental block. So that's the first thing. Next step that is really important, and this is what I work with my gymnast one-on-one on, is that they need to start to rebuild trust with their brains. What happens when a gymnast is no longer doing a skill or her brain is putting the brakes on is typical gymnast, I'm going to get this. I'm going to push through. What happens is she starts to ignore the signs of what her brain is telling her. Her brain is telling her to freeze, to not go. Her brain is going into danger mode, into panic, and it is telling her to stop. And she's like, I will do this skill. Going to stand there for 10 minutes trying to go for her series. She's going to keep trying to do her tumbling and balking. She's going to try to push through because after all, this is a skill she can do and she doesn't understand why she's not doing it. But what happens when she does that is that her trust is just getting lower and lower and lower with her brain. She's depleting that trust. That is not good because a brain that doesn't trust her is a brain that's going to freeze over and over and over again. How do we build trust? Your gymnast needs to start focusing on the things that she can do that are related to her skill. Unfortunately, this is where a lot of gymnasts get stuck because they are not willing to go back to basics and do some of the baby steps that they used to do or have, did when they were 5 or 6 years old, first learning the skill out of fear of embarrassment, out of feeling stupid about it, out of that sense of, I shouldn't have to do this. I know how to do the skill. A lot of gymnasts will actually get themselves stuck at this point and not be able to move through their mental block. So like I said, building trust entails doing what your brain is allowing you to do that day. So if we're talking about a series, it's not happening on low beam that day, go do it on the laser beam. Or low beam, we got to stack the panel mats again. Maybe you took one panel stack away, you got to put it back. Maybe you need a spot. Gymnasts don't want to hear that. A lot of coaches don't want to hear that. But when your brain is going through this freeze mode, spots are really, really useful because it gets her body back to doing the skill and builds trust in her brain. So now she's starting to build trust. If she can get past her own embarrassment and feelings that she shouldn't be having to do these steps, she can start to build trust again. And these are baby steps because it takes a while. There are some days where she'll come in and she's working on high beam again and it feels great. And then other days, could be even the next practice, where she can barely do it on the low beam. And that is normal. That's par for the course in a mental block. And she just has to go with the flow. And that is frustrating as a gymnast. Gymnasts don't go with the flow. They make things happen. Having to listen to her brain and figure out what she can do that day is really challenging. But that's one of the biggest steps in getting through a mental block is building that trust back up. And she's got to do it. And finally, your gymnast needs to learn how to communicate with her coach. This is a really, really tough step because normally when things are going well, it's really hard to communicate with most gymnastics coaches. So now asking her to do that when things aren't going so good for her is really tricky. But the reason this is important is because most coaches, at least most coaches that I have worked with or heard about, do not really understand what a mental block is. And so what happens is at first they might be patient. Maybe they'll let your gymnast do what she has to do. And then pretty soon afterwards, they start to use that as a sign that your gymnast isn't trying, which we know isn't true, but that's what coaches think. They think, oh, she's lazy. She's not motivated. She doesn't really want this. She's purposely not doing her skill. She's not trying. Not true, not true, not true, not true. But that's what it feels like as a gymnastics coach. So that's why it's really important for your gymnast to try to communicate to her coach what is happening. Now, here's the thing. Most gymnasts don't know what's happening. That's where it gets tricky because you ask a gymnast going through a mental block, why aren't you doing your skill or what happened? And their answer is typically, I don't know. And it's not because they have nothing else to say. It's because they don't know. Really confusing for a gymnast who's been doing a skill to all of a sudden not be able to do it and not understand why. She knows she can do it. And so she's pushing, she's trying to do it, but it's not happening. And so it's really confusing. So she genuinely does not know why. But what I teach my gymnasts to do is, okay, you might not know the exact reason, but it's really important that you express to your coach something like this. Coach, I'm not sure why I'm not going for my skill, but it feels like. So she might fill in that sentence by saying, it feels like my brain is putting the brakes on and I just won't go. Or something feels weird. Something feels strange to me. Something feels funky. It's off. For whatever reason, it doesn't feel right. And so giving those little bits of information, while it's not explaining why the mental block is happening, it's letting her coach know a little bit about what's going on in her brain. When she can relay that information, then our coach is a little bit more patient and usually has a little bit more understanding and can also say, okay, well, if that doesn't feel good, what can you do? And so often that opens up the conversation into, how can I help this gymnast as opposed to this gymnast isn't trying. So that's a really, really important step, that communication step. Okay. And there's a few other things that I work with my gymnasts on. I'm not going to reveal them here because those are the things I save and use with my private one-on-one gymnasts. If you are interested, I do offer a 3-session mental block jumpstart, which will help your gymnast get the tools she needs to understand her mental block as well as to start working through it. One final thing I want to say is that a mental block requires patience. Requires like championship level patience from both you as a parent and her as a gymnast. Some mental blocks, they happen for a couple of days and then whoop, she moves through them. Like she kind of figures it out and she's on to the next. It's fine. Other mental blocks will last for months and years. There's a lot of factors that go into why a mental block might last for a really long time, but you've got to kind of hang on for the ride. This is a roller coaster ride. A mental block is not for the faint of heart. It does represent a deeper underlying disconnect that is happening within your gymnast, and it's something that she's going to need help working through. So you have to have patience, and she's got to have patience, and she has to be open-minded in doing things that she doesn't think she needs to do in order to build trust with her brain. And that's not easy. That's why a lot of gymnasts stay stuck, get really frustrated, and then it becomes this whole perfect storm of events between coach, parents, and gymnast. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this.